Thoughts is this big, beautiful economy that actually was rolling pretty good with jobs and inflation coming down feels more like the Game of Thrones Red Wedding. I mean, it is not going well. This is being executed poorly. Consumer prices are not going down. We're 70% a consumer-driven country. So building a moat around the United States with protectionist and isolationist economic policies are not positive. And this isn't me saying it. This is JP Morgan, 60% chance of a recession.
But look, at this moment in time, with the market down 1,238 points right now on the Dow Industrials and the NASDAQ down 800 right now, and the market's not even open, futures indicating a very ugly opening, now would be the time for some clarity.
It was the worst day for stocks since March 2020, and very early this morning, prices were falling again.
JP Morgan upping its recession odds to 60% from 40% previously, citing obviously the tariffs, the effect on business sentiment, the effect on investment, and the effect on and on consumer price. They said, quote, these policies, if sustained, would likely push the U.S. and possibly global economy into recession this year.
Hosts and guests on Fox News, for one.
Well, BMW is going to rethink South Carolina because it's not going to import tariffed parts, engines from Germany, then to send those vehicles to export them. So again, it will mean if that plant stays open, it will mean fewer jobs potentially because they're going to make those vehicles somewhere else.
Well, where are they going to sell them now?
They sell them to China. They sell them to China and they sell them to Europe.
So every American customer who could buy a BMW could be replaced overnight by a Chinese customer.
They sell them they export them to China.
No, but I'm saying you can't make
they import the parts, which will be tariffed, and then they will export them from the United States where they're manufactured back to Europe, where they will be tariffed again, and then to China and nations around the globe. Right? So these are the problems that a U.S. manufacturer faces because the parts are coming from somewhere else.
They can also just make the parts here. They can make the car.
No, they can't. Absolutely not. That's a fallacy.
It's impossible.
It was holding up fine. The economy was good. Everything was fine. Now there's this blinding light, like a giant searchlight staring at everyone with these tariffs. And these numbers aren't going to make any difference at all. What the market is worried about is what's going to happen in the future. Who's going to hire now in this uncertain environment? Yeah. I think people are very, very concerned.
And those 401k people who are depending, those retirees, all of that, just talking plain speak with them. Look, when this nation used to go to war, people in this country would support the war effort with their materials at home and making things for weaponry and all of that. We got to do 100% buy-in over this bumpy period. Just communicate.
And you know what? I don't really care about my 401k today. You know what? Not that I can afford it. Not that it isn't important. Not that I'm not at a point in my life when I should be worried about my 401k, because I am. But this is what I believe. I believe in this man. And I believe that what we're seeing now with his bringing in $1 trillion in business and manufacturing and companies moving back to the United States.
Again, everybody's tightening the belt. Everybody's trying to figure out how to save money here and there. And that's just the natural game. And we teach this all the time on the Ramsey Show. Yeah. Listen, it's a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. You only get hurt if you jump off amid the ride. You know, be smart. If you got to pull back for your vacation this year because times are a little tighter, fine. Save, plan, and you just can't be the sky is falling looking at the headlines every day to decide how I'm going to live life.
Continuing to move down. We now have the NASDAQ off 1,000 points, 5.6%. The Dow Industrials are down 1,558 points. By the way, if the Dow goes down 1,712 points, that will put the Dow in correction territory. The NASDAQ already in correction territory with a loss of 1,000 points. Check out the 10-year Treasury yield, please. It's been going down. It's just a tad above 4%, 4.01. Sharp decline in the yield there. The price of gold coming down a little bit from its previous highs, $8 lower at 31.57. Bitcoin, that's not exactly strong this morning. It's at 81.5.
Yesterday, President Trump declared that it was, in fact, Liberation Day, his giant tariff policy that he just dropped on the market unilaterally, probably unconstitutionally. Trump's reciprocal tariffs impose hundreds of billions of dollars in new taxes on Americans, be the largest tax increase since the Revenue Act of 1968. one of the biggest tax increases on American consumers in the history of America. And it's going to cost American consumers. It will cost American producers who use inputs from other countries. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted immediately more than 1,000 points. The S&P 500 plummeted more than 3%. The NASDAQ plummeted almost 4.5%. There are real world implications for this sort of stuff. Trade wars are in fact not good and not easy to win, particularly if you don't actually have a plan. It is predicated on a bad idea of how international trade works. A fundamental misunderstanding of trade deficits. Trade deficits they're an accounting procedure. Trade deficits have pretty much nothing to do with the health of an economy. I can name you a period in American history where there was a fairly large surplus in America's balance of trade. The entire Great Depression.
Hell, even Steve Bannon, while on a separate issue, isn't confident that Trump will even last 4 years in office.
S&P 500 drops of 5% or more at this point in a presidency. There are only two of them, right? There's Donald Trump, a 10% drop since he took office. The only one that matches it or exceeds it was George W. Bush back in 2001, a drop of 18%. This is it. This is the whole kit and caboodle since the S&P 500 was created as an index back in 1957. When you're one of two and we're talking about drops in the stock market,
Why? Well, because prices have not gone down on day one, like he promised. Wars haven't ended, like he promised. And so, in conclusion, people are coming to terms with the aftertaste of the snake oil they chug. And unfortunately for us, we're all collateral.
But the numbers that they did, and they had this ridiculous, I mean, that was the chart that they had with the mathematical equation. I mean, are you kidding me? How about just like...
It looks like an Einstein.
I know. How about the fact that it was just wrong? Yeah. And what bothered me, Aaron, was that they really did, over and over again, the president said, listen, it's going to be reciprocal. So you do it, we do it. And that was going to be so good. And I really believed in it. And I feel like a sucker tonight. Because I am not a free trader, and I do not believe in free trade. And I was just as tough, if not tougher, than his people, but they screwed it up.